I've started up my backup recording, and I'm about to fire up the Zencaster. And again, just know that I am going for ad insertion points at around 20, 40, and 60 minutes.
Okay.
And again, so here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I am David Chen, and joining me today are
Devendra Hardawar.
And Jeff Kanata.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Today is Monday, November 2nd. We're recording this show. By the time you're listening to this, it's probably going to be Tuesday, November 3rd. And I'm just going to start this episode by stating the obvious. Everyone is probably really stressed today. You know, no matter what side of the political aisle you are, it's apparently a very stressful time. I read in the story in NBC News today about how everyone is incredibly stressed right now.
I like how you say apparently, like you don't feel emotions.
No, I don't. I don't know.
My robot body doesn't understand this, but apparently the humans are having a problem.
People tell me about emotions. I understand it intellectually, but I don't know what it actually feels like. No. I hope to one day taste the glory of human emotions, you know? But until that time, I'll just say that, here on the Slash Filmcast tonight on this podcast, here's what we're going to be discussing. We got a little bit of film.
Dave, I don't want to go past that moment for a second. I made a goofy joke, but I want to say we're in a unique position right now. People are hearing this in the future.
Yes.
And we are in this Schrodinger's cat situation where democracy is both alive and dead inside the box.
It's true.
The ballot box, that is.
Yep.
Yes.
Nice.
And we don't know which one it is. And the people who are listening to this do. So they are either commiserating with us and going, oh, they had no idea. Or they're like, these guys, you know, they're so anxious and so worried it's all going to work out okay. Or more likely, neither of those.
Something horribly muddled in between, you know?
Some sort of bunker situation as the new American Civil War has broken out, and they're using the Slash Filmcast as just a kind of salve to get through the next minute of their lives, because they're taking it minute by minute.
Yeah, I mean, it is a common trope in science fiction to have a kind of an event in the future that is like cataclysmic, right? And that cannot be predicted. There was actually a brilliant sci-fi series that came out recently that might sound like the word BEVs. And it features a machine that can predict the future, except for one major event that clouded the machine's thinking. And it feels a lot like that's what's happening with the election right now, in the sense that the election is this huge thing that looms large, where the impact will likely be felt for the rest of our lives, but we can't predict with any real confidence what is actually going to happen in the next week. And so we are living in the sci-fi movie. We are living in BEVs right now, or a show that sounds like it.
I think you're burying the lead here, Dave, just a bit, because I need to tell listeners we are actually from the future. We are from the post-election reality, and the only way you'll survive is by listening to podcasts, apparently. Just all the podcasts. Go back and listen to our old episodes.
Right. Join our Patreon. Join our Patreon, or suffer the consequences of the future. That's our message.
Great message, Jeff. Go ahead.
I wanna congratulate you, Dave, because you have single-handedly come up with a loophole to spoilers that I did not foresee. The sound alike. Completely sidestepping the spoiler. No one could possibly get spoiled with a sounds like. Right?
I don't know. I think people are probably pretty angry at me right now, to be honest. Just gonna put that out there. So anyway, okay.
Man.
I have more to say on this topic, but before we get to that,
I can't wait until people send us emails spoiling Blennet for us.
All right. So anyway, today on the podcast, we got a little bit of film news to discuss. We got some what we've been watching to discuss. We got our weekly plugs, and then we're going to move into an in-depth review about On the Rocks, the new Sofia Coppola movie that just debuted on Apple TV Plus. Because why not ring in the apocalypse with a light, fluffy film that is of no consequence to anyone? No, I mean, it should be a fun discussion, but that is what is in store today. Now, as Jeff and Devindra kind of indicated in different ways, the Patreon is live, gentlemen. The Patreon's live. Patreon.com/film podcast. That's patreon.com/the-word-film podcast. If you are interested in supporting this podcast, head over to patreon.com/film podcast. Ad-free episodes.
It's shocking we got that name, by the way. I just have to say, no other movie podcast has ever been on Patreon.
It's so true.
Apparently.
It's so true. No wildly successful film podcast. Our Patreon is live. Thanks to all the over 700 people who have contributed to the Patreon already. And just a quick note about how the Patreon is going to work is basically the Patreon is going to give you, using your personalized RSS feed, ad-free episodes as well as After Dark episodes. Now, as a gesture of good faith and possibly as a marketing tactic, we are going to release the After Darks for free through the rest of the year on the main feed.
Get them hooked.
Yep,
Get them hooked.
Yep, you will get them a little bit later on the main feed than you do on the Patreon, but you will be able to get them, and it's basically, we're transitioning over. We know it's a pain in the ass. We're transitioning from PayPal to Patreon. It's kind of a pain, so like it's kind of our way of saying thank you. Thanks for dealing with us. Thanks for bearing with us as we go through this transition. We really appreciate it. Now, typically, what we would do to record the After Dark is we'd record the main episode and just go straight into the After Dark when we are desperately tired, our brains are struggling for oxygen, and we basically have nothing new of interest to say. That's when we typically record the After Dark, right?
That's why you're our salesman, Dave.
Yep,
Doing good.
Yep, that's generally how we do the After Dark, and that's generally how we will do the After Dark in future weeks that aren't this week. However, as we've just discussed, this week there is an event happening, to quote M. Night Shyamalan. There is an event of major import. That's the election. And we weighed a few options. We thought about, okay, should we record the After Dark and release it? We usually release the After Darks on like Friday or Saturday. Should we record the After Dark and release it Friday or Saturday? If we record it on Monday night, whatever we record, whatever it is, will be hopelessly out of touch with whatever has occurred.
It's trash. It's pure trash.
It's complete garbage, even more so than the normal podcast, right?
Frustratingly uninformed content. Yes.
It would be like, I don't know, if you ran a video game podcast or something, and then like you recorded an episode, and the next day like Microsoft purchased Bethesda. It would be
only
like
an idiot would do that.
Only an idiot, like grossly unprofessional. Basically a disgrace to what your profession is. You know what I'm saying? Only a moron would do something like that. So rather than do that, what we're going to do is we have actually scheduled a separate recording date for the After Dark. It's going to be after the election. And so if you want to hear our thoughts on what's going on after the election, at least what we know as of this Thursday, then you're going to want to subscribe to the Patreon at patreon.com/film podcast or the regular feed a day later. But just letting folks know that this week we're going to record the After Dark like later in the week. Usually it'll just be the same time.
So it's actually timely. Yeah,
it's actually timely this week. We got to kick things off in style. So
I think no matter how this goes down, that After Dark will involve a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Like it'll just be...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be a fun one, folks.
Oh, I mean, we have purchased, let's just say, edible products for this household. Like pizza and stuff.
You mean food?
Yeah. Usually Robot Dave doesn't eat, but this time he's making an exception.
Indeed. All right. Well, that's what is going to happen with the Patreon this week. Again, thanks to everyone who donated and is a patron. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to delivering you some content of some level of quality. Period. The end. All right. So
TM.
TM. So to move on to a more serious topic, because 2020 is the year that just won't stop taking, we learned this week that Sean Connery has passed away. Sean Connery passed away. Very, very sad. And I just wanted to acknowledge it on the air before we move on because... yeah, this is a guy, like, he is an actor who hasn't made that much stuff recently, but he's an actor who's made stuff that obviously each of us like treasure dearly, right?
Definitely.
I think he's definitely uh, part of the way like his roles in the James Bond movies are like how I started to understand like, kind of classical notions of masculinity, as an example, right?
For better or
Um,
worse, yeah.
but I always thought he brought some great. Yeah, he is how all men should behave, is my understanding. No,
Yes, yes.
but I always appreciated the gravitas he brought to roles, regardless of how absolutely silly they were. And so, why don't we start with this exercise, and then we can talk a little bit more about him. But like, favorite Sean Connery movie? I want to ask each of you, and I thought a lot about this. I mean, obviously,
There's a lot to choose from.
so many to choose from. So many to choose from. I mean, I know many of you are probably thinking Entrapment, that robbery movie with Catherine Zeta-Jones, but
Of course.
I mean, we can't all pick Dragonheart.
It's true. It's true. I actually really liked
Or
Dragonheart.
Finding Forrester. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, okay, you guys are being
Yeah.
a little mean now, but I actually like, I enjoyed all those. I thought he
I
did
do
great.
enjoy them.
He
I enjoy
did
them
great
all.
in
I
all those
wasn't
movies.
saying that because they're bad. I'm just saying them because
Yeah.
they're dwarfed by other movies of his.
So true, so true, so true. Right. So, for me, like, really loved his work in The Rock. Really loved his work in the James Bond movies. But I gotta say that my favorite Sean Connery movie is probably Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's because
Yeah.
it's his.
That's the one we grew up with.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. It's like
That's the
think
one
that's
that made me know who Sean Connery was.
Yes.
I mean, that's
okay.
like, I mean, I kind of had an idea of who he was, but like that's my Sean Connery, right?
Mhm.
My James Bond was Roger Moore. My Sean Connery wasn't James Bond, right?
Yeah,
My
yeah.
Sean Connery was Dr. Jones. And that's who Sean Connery was to me. I will never ever forget my dad. I want to say it's on Father's Day, but I don't know if that's apocryphal in my head. But I want to say it was Father's Day that he and I went to the movies together, just the two of us. My mom didn't go, my sister didn't go. It was just the two of us, and we went to see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade on the big screen in a movie theater that no longer exists in my hometown, but was one of those old timey movie
Mhm.
palaces.
Love
Like
those.
a
Yeah.
single screen, just ornate
Red
decoration
carpet
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, big like box seats, like a mezzanine and all that stuff. And I'll never forget, I can see it in my mind sitting next to my dad watching that movie and just being brought into a world of imagination. It's a movie about dads.
Yep.
It's a movie about and that was like the dad. Like Indiana Jones's dad is as cool as Indiana Jones. And really, who else could you get to play that? Like that was the only person that you could cast as Indiana Jones's dad. And it was perfect. And he was so perfect. And he didn't need to be, the alpha, right? He got to sit in the sidecar and clutch his umbrella and his hat. And it was such a perfect performance. I don't know. For me at that age, that he was everything, and I loved it.
Yeah. And also that movie was on TV all the time. So among the like family friendly Sean Connery movies, I feel like that was among the rare ones during the 90s at least. And I grew up with that. I watched that a ton. I'll have to say though, probably my overall favorite, there's so many. I love him in The Hunt for Red October because that feels like that character is just
great
that's
movie.
pure nobility. It's pure like, man, he's doing the hard thing, and you think he's kind of the villain at first, and like, man, that movie just works on so many levels. But I also have to say I love him for when he goes genre and isn't ashamed of it. So freaking Highlander. It's not a great movie, but I genuinely love it. And hey, he looks ridiculous in Zardoz, but he freaking committed to that movie. Like that's professionalism. So I love him forever for these sorts of things. And yes, Bond. I'm not sure what my favorite of his is. I think like Goldfinger is the one where it kind of
Goldfinger.
encapsulated everything about him. Yeah.
But he's like, talking about culturally relevant. I mean, this is a guy who was not only somebody that was obviously very admired and very imitated, but like even people that imitated him, like the imitations became beloved. Like on Celebrity Jeopardy, right?
Right.
The fake Sean
Daryl
Connery.
Hammond.
Right, Daryl
Yeah.
Hyman, Sean Connery in Celebrity Jeopardy was incredible, and like
Yeah.
I remember like that being a part of growing up with like the idea of Sean Connery as well. So he was just there's nothing like it. Now let me take you guys down a rat hole here with regards to Sean Connery, and what almost could have been. But do you guys remember that when Skyfall was being made?
Yep.
There was this character in Skyfall uh, called Kincaid.
Yeah. Old
and
guy for no reason in the house. Yeah.
yeah, and apparently Sam Mendes considered casting Sean Connery as Kincaid in Skyfall, which would have been pretty remarkable. It would have been like I don't know that we've seen like two Bonds in a film before, right? In the same Bond film. But man, that would have been amazing. But according to Sam Mendes, like it's problematic because it would take you out of the movie.
Yeah.
Connery is Bond,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
not going to come back as another character. He's been there, so
Yeah.
it was a very brief flirtation with that thought, but it was never going to happen because I thought it would distract. End quote. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Distract
I'm
you in a
glad we didn't
Bond
get that.
movie.
No,
Yeah,
his Bond,
right.
like his Bond continuation is The Rock. Like for me,
Yeah.
in my head canon, that is what happened to James Bond. At some point in the '90s, and The Rock is the follow up to all of his Bond movies.
Still my favorite Michael Bay film, I think, is
Yeah.
The Rock is, because it had that perfect combination of all of Michael Bay's fetishes, like the U.S. military, slow motion action, like all this stuff, combined with Nicolas Cage being the most Nicolas Cage ever, or not the most,
Sure,
obviously not
sure.
true. That's probably Vampire's Kiss, but like Nicolas Cage being really, really out there, like a great Nicolas Cage action performance, coupled with Ed Harris, Sean Connery in that movie. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just an
yeah.
unstoppable trio right there.
It's insane. And also the stories we're just getting like from people who've worked with him. Like there I forget who tweeted this, but somebody said a character actor they worked with on The Rock at some point, like Bay was trying to direct his acting, and it didn't. Connery said something like, "Don't you have a bridge to blow up somewhere?" It's just like, fuck off and let the man act. Okay.
That's awesome.
There's a story that
Yeah, I mean,
Brian
you-
Koppelman told about
Mhm.
Sean Connery working with Brett Ratner.
Yep.
Basically, I won't read the whole story, but basically they had a disagreement, and Sean Connery asked the director, who apparently was Brett Ratner, like how he was planning to shoot an action sequence, and Brett Ratner says, "I'll use movie magic." And then Brian Koppelman tweets, "You could hear the silent anger on Sean Connery's end of the phone," and Sean Connery then says, "I started making movies before your daddy started pleasuring himself. I want to know shot by shot, how will you execute this?" End quote. And
gold.
yeah, it's awesome. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
we
He's
stand a king.
completely badass. Completely badass.
He
dude.
suffered no fools,
Yes.
He-
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Jeff?
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna. I mean, there's so many other movies that we could mention that were incredible. Obviously we've hit the ones that I would bring up as my number ones, but we haven't
Yeah.
mentioned the Untouchables yet.
Untouchables, great
Mhm.
choice. Yeah.
Presidio
Yeah.
is awesome. I mean, there's so many. I even like in college, I even dug or not college, high school, I guess it was. I dug Medicine Man. Like it was like a cool, campy, fun thing. Like the idea of
Yeah.
like swinging from treetop to treetop. And the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the Avengers. He was in the Avengers before the Avengers. Pretty good stuff.
The '90s Avengers, which we don't remember, unfortunately.
Medicine
Yeah.
Man, John McTiernan movie. John
Yeah.
McTiernan made that movie.
He's in Time Bandits. I mean,
Mhm.
come on.
Yeah.
Time Bandits.
Were you a fan of that movie, Jeff?
Time Bandits?
Yeah.
That movie's a blast.
The
Yeah, come on.
Yes.
Terry Gilliam, right?
Yes.
Incredible.
Yep.
Oh, dude. As a kid, yeah. Come on. I wore out the VHS of that.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, anyway, a huge loss for cinema. And yeah, I really, really appreciated this guy as an actor and loved his work and also his style. And he will deeply be missed. So,
Yeah.
Sean Connery, rest in peace. Thanks for everything you contributed to the world of movies. It was a blast. All right, let's move on to what we've been watching this week. I want to talk about How To with John Wilson. Have you guys heard of this movie? This show
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
on HBO Max? Have you seen it yet?
No.
No.
Uh, Let me just say, I mean, I think this show is excellent, and I think Devindra specifically needs to watch it because
Oh yeah. I'm
uh,
really looking forward to it.
it's hard to describe what this even is. And if you actually watch the trailer, like the trailer,
That's also how people describe me. So
yeah, but like the
It's perfect
trailer is
fit.
about how they couldn't figure out a way to advertise a show, you know, and so. I'll read the plot summary from the internet. Documentary filmmaker John Wilson embarks on an odyssey of self-discovery and cultural observation by covertly filming the lives of fellow New Yorkers while trying to share advice. So the structure of each episode is it's how to blank. So how to make small talk, how to put up scaffolding, like literal scaffolding in New York City, like the scaffolding that you walk underneath when you're next to a building,
Yep.
uh, and so every episode's kind of a how-to. And what is extraordinary about it is that the dry style in which the director John Wilson narrates everything is very kind of he's just basically like incredibly socially awkward, and he's narrating this stuff, and it's just like he's filming all this random stuff that occasionally is very very disturbing and occasionally is very funny and occasionally very weird and sometimes very insightful and sometimes very revealing, and he's just delivering this narration in like a super dry fashion. Nathan Fielder is an executive producer on this show, and it very much feels like a Fielder influenced project. How many of you guys watched Nathan For You? Jeff, did you ever get on the Nathan For You train?
I never finished it, but I watched a few episodes because you guys had spoken so highly of it.
And
Yeah,
you weren't
I liked
you
it.
weren't a fan? Okay, you were.
I don't know why it didn't click with me. I don't know if I gave it enough of a chance. I know you guys were saying it really was a work of genius. I just never. I think I watched maybe 2 episodes, and I found it to be funny, but I don't think I clicked the way you did.
That's fair enough. Nathan For You is work of genius. You took the words right out of my mouth. I think it's brilliant. One of the things I think is brilliant about it is that it blurs the line between truth and fiction, right? Between documentary, truth and fiction. Like you don't know how much of what you're watching is actually true or quote unquote true. Like
So like the news.
Indeed. Like you don't know if it's been staged. You don't know like if the people are into it or I'm sorry, are in on it. You don't even know if like those people have been asked permission to have this footage shown. And so it's just like you're always questioning like what is real and what is not real when you're watching this. But really, so the kind of way the narration is delivered is one kind of quote unquote selling point of the show. But the second thing is just the B-roll that he's able to get, and also the way in which the B-roll is assembled is just he elevates it to art form. All these odd juxtapositions, it really is delightful to observe and watch. So I really enjoy the show. It's like one of the most enjoyable things I've seen last year, and it's very weird. It's not for everyone. Jeff, it might not be on your wavelength, just like Nathan For You wasn't on your wavelength, but I thought it was great, and I think if you're willing to be weirded out by a show, then you will enjoy How To with John Wilson, which is airing right now on HBO Max. So, and yeah, it's gotten a lot of coverage recently. You know, if you Google How To with John Wilson, the New York Times just published an article. The best half hour of comedy in 2020 is about scaffolding. That is an article that was published today about How To with John Wilson. So, talking about the scaffolding episode. So anyway, it's really.
Well, I'm willing to give it a shot. It sounds intriguing.
Yeah, check it out. Let's talk about it next week. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So, and each episode is only 30 minutes long, so it's if you aren't a fan, you can get out of there pretty quickly. But so, How To with John Wilson on HBO Max. That's what I've been watching. Devindra Hardawar, tell me about what you've been watching.
Oh, I got around to seeing David Byrne's American Utopia, which is streaming now on HBO Max. This is a documentary, or not quite a documentary. This is a
concert film.
It's a musical. Yeah, it's a concert film of his Broadway production, directed by Spike Lee. I love David Byrne. I love Talking Heads, and this just felt like a thing. It was like a nice injection of hope and optimism in, the cruel world we're in right now. So the film is basically David Byrne and a bunch of musicians with wireless instruments, just playing on a soundstage. Some of his most memorable songs from Talking Heads, and some from his American Utopia album. It's a blast. I think your enjoyment of this comes down to really how much you love David Byrne. But I have to say, like, I love the guy, and I feel like for people who have never really given Talking Heads a chance, this is a good introduction to what makes him so special. Because Talking Heads is just a band of like skilled musicians making very catchy tunes, and even if their lyrics didn't make much sense most of the time, like, it's just so much fun to listen to. And it was actually so much fun. Like, my daughter was watching it alongside me, and she just like started dancing. She started drumming tunes to certain songs. I think it was Home. She just loved the vibe of it, and the entire show is just it's a celebration of his music, but also in a way, it's American Utopia. It is sort of like the ideal of like what what we are as a country. I don't think it gets very heavy-handed about it, but there's certainly points, right? There are points where there's a point where he's singing out the names of black people who've been killed by police and killed in America, and it becomes this wonderful tribute to all those people who are lost. And the special overall just feels like something that's very hopeful about where we can go. So if you're sitting and staring at Twitter or Facebook or whatever and doom scrolling this week, I'd suggest this as an alternative. It's great. It's fantastic. It is the American Utopia I want.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about this. I watched American Utopia on HBO Max as well, and I actually had the chance to see this concert live. It was not on Broadway though. It was at an outdoor festival called
Yeah,
Sasquatch,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
and I mean, Devindra, I think you're. If anything, I think you're underselling how amazing this is because
It's great. It's
because
great.
because basically the way the lighting and the set on this thing is designed is fascinating. He uses lighting. I don't know who like Spike Lee directed this, but I would say like
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't think Spike Lee designed the Broadway show though. I think he just did
No,
the
that's
film,
like
right?
it's like his type of thing. Like Byrne does all sorts of different art. I'm sure he's worked with folks with it, but this seems
Right.
like something from his own head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the way that the show is lit and the way that the set is designed is able to kind of replicate cinematic techniques. And it's really remarkable when you're watching it live because you think to yourself, oh, I know, like, we have a kind of way of perceiving and processing visual information. Like, when you're watching TV or when you're watching a movie, you're like, okay, this is one mode of perceiving information. And when you're watching a live concert, you're thinking, okay, this is like I'm perceiving space in this way and I'm perceiving how this is happening. And when you watch American Utopia on HBO Max, directed by Spike Lee, it's like those things are blurred together because you're watching a filmed version of a live concert, but then the way that the live concert is lit and edited and shot makes it feel like again, having seen it in person, it's like you're watching like a movie, right? Like you're watching a piece of visual art, but yet somehow it is transpiring live on stage. And so it's really remarkable what he's able to do. And I think when I watched it live and then I heard there was going to be a concert film, I thought, okay, best case scenario, this concert film captures part of the magic of seeing this thing live. And I think it does that. It's hard to capture the exact magic because again, watching it live, you're like, this is amazing. It's like I'm watching this in a TV, but it's live. And I know I'm like sounding almost incoherent in describing it, but like that's the best I can describe it as. It's like you're watching something that's like ultra designed. That's like, as an example, like sometimes the stage will divide itself into like little sections, right? And it's like you're watching like the stage become a metaphor for whatever the song is trying to say, and it's like. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. So it's really interesting visually, and the tunes are a delight, and it's very creative. And I think the concert, like the direction of the actual special, is very good. The thing you don't want to do for this special is destroy the magic of what the live show was, and I think this special retains that magic. So
That's great.
anyway. American Utopia, I had a great time as well. Check it out. And if you're a fan of David Byrne, you will love American
Mhm.
Utopia. So it's on HBO Max. All right. So Devindra, you've been really, really busy as well, right?
I have. So I haven't had much time to watch many things because I have in my house the two next generation consoles, and I can't.
What?
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's amazing.
you have the
It's amazing to
PlayStation
live with
5
this.
and the Xbox Series X.
Yep.
We don't usually talk about video games in the podcast, but Jeff obviously hosts a video game podcast. I am
Sure.
very into video games, and
Yeah,
I
and
am very
these
excited.
devices they're media devices too. Like they're
Yeah.
all relevant, you
Yeah,
know, and they're fine. They're cool.
How dare you?
It's fine.
How dare you?
I can only say
I
so
have,
much.
I have exactly 2 things to look forward to this year, Devindra.
Yep.
So let me ask you this, Devindra. Like, do you feel special at all that you're one of maybe a couple dozen people in the country that has one of these right
I
now?
mean,
Like,
I did.
Like
It's my
literally, there
job to
are
kind of do a
millions
bunch
of
this stuff.
people. There are literally
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
millions of people that want the devices that you have right now in your house,
Yeah, yeah.
and in fact, millions more that can't even pre-order it. I'm one of those people. I want to pre-order. I literally don't have the option to pre-order it right now because they're all sold out.
Yep.
So do you feel like do you feel special? Do you feel nervous at all that you're like
Oh yeah.
someone's gonna break in and
It's
take these things or something? Like how does it
it's
feel?
terrifying. I mean, these things are not like top secret, military things. Like they're really cool consumer hardware. If you have recently bought a new computer, like you two gentlemen, you currently have much more gaming power, underneath your desk. So, these consoles are going to be fine. I can't talk too much about them. I can't say like basic stuff about the design and whatnot. And just as boxes, as devices that sit in your entertainment center, they're both very wild, right?
They're
Because
huge. They're huge.
they're huge. The Xbox Series X it is straight up a PC tower. It is kind of a miniaturized PC tower. I cannot fit it vertically anywhere, but it fits nicely horizontally next to my like center speaker. So that's fine. The PlayStation 5 is enormous.
It looks
So
unmanageable.
big.
It looks unmanageable.
It
to me.
is insanely big. It's also a shape that's like a plastic egg where you don't know how to like which way is up. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell which way is up either in vertical and horizontal mode, and it requires a stand because of the weird ass shape. So to like just keep everything stable. So I can't say like from the basic hardware design, I'm very much preferring what Xbox did, but have to say the controller on the PS5 is phenomenal. It is something that I think we're going to be talking about for a while, just because they did some really cool haptic stuff and some really cool tech where they can add resistance to the triggers. So the game, the console ships with Astrobot. I could talk about one level of that, and that one level called Cooling Springs just really sells what is so transformative about this controller because you can feel everything. You can feel like the difference in surfaces as you're walking around. Like if you're walking
I heard
on
like
sand,
if sand, you can feel
Yep.
sand through the
you
controller.
can feel
Yeah.
it's like a little sandy, it's a little rough.
Don't put
If you're walking
sand
on
in your
metal,
controller, Dave.
well, it's just there. That's the magic
Mm.
of what's happening now. But yeah, if you walk on metal, you walk on wood, it just feels different. The resistance of the controller is kind of just it's surprising. Like when that game turned on, the controller kind of shakes a little and it's almost like it's grabbing your hand the way it moves. So I found that kind of shocking. I hope to see more developers taking advantage of it, and I'll have more to say on this down the line. Reviews are incoming. The hardware is really cool, folks, but if you have a gaming PC, you've already got much better hardware, so it's fine. It's fine. These aren't the things. They're not gonna change your life or anything, but they're very cool upgrades over the last gen.
I think
From
what's
what
also
I've seen so
interesting.
far.
What's also interesting about this is like these are probably the last consoles that will have Blu-ray players in them, right? Like
Yeah,
if
yeah,
future consoles
probably.
come
Some
out,
of
like
them don't.
I gotta yeah, some of them don't. I gotta yeah,
SKUs that don't.
they have SKUs that don't.
Yeah.
But like if there is ever another generation after this, my guess is they probably won't have Blu-ray players. So this is kind of the swan song for blue. And I'm just saying that I don't actually know any information. Like I don't have any
Sure,
inside
sure,
info.
sure.
But like this is probably the swan song for physical media players on consoles that are widely distributed.
I mean,
And-
I go even further. Like this may be maybe not the last actual physical consoles you'll own that are underneath your TV, but we're getting close to the point where game streaming could actually be a big deal, and that's something everyone's building towards.
Right?
So
Yeah.
the future of media is really fascinating right now, especially when it comes to games. I think these things are really cool, but I have to say the system I'm really intrigued by is the Series S, which I don't have because that thing is super. Somebody else on our staff is reviewing that, but that thing is cheap and for a lot of folks will deliver like all the gaming you kind of want or need, even if you have a 4K TV. So that's going to be an interesting side by side. And yeah, I'm interested to see like where this generation goes. There's a lot of cool stuff happening right now, and at least like we're getting 4K standard with these systems, and maybe more higher frame rates and stuff, and that's all going to be really cool. Check out my reviews later, soon at Engadget. You'll see.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Jeff Canado, what have you been watching this week?
Well, you guys talking about American Utopia reminded me of something else I wanted to mention, which is I had a chance, I had the privilege, I had the joy of watching a live streamed concert for my favorite band, The Midnight. They did a special concert on October 30th. I think it's still streaming if you go to midnightofficial.com. I love The Midnight. It is legit my favorite band right now. Now that Prince is dead, it's The Midnight. And my family loves it. My kids love their music. We streamed it in the living room, dancing around. Their sort of synthwave, wonderful, sort of a retro sound. But their new album is they're fantastic. If you haven't heard me talk about The Midnight before, just listen to their music. Search for The Midnight. Their newest album is called Monsters. Actually, there's one. They did a Halloween album on Amazon Prime streaming, but Monsters is, I think, their best album. It's amazing. It's their newest album.
Am I making up that they listen to the Slash Filmcast? Is that did I
that's
fabricate?
what I was just about to transition
sorry,
to.
I always step on your transitions, Jeff. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know you enjoy that.
I
give some joy
I relish it. I just got a
Yes.
dopamine hit just now.
You're welcome. The Tim McEwen, who is half of The Midnight, just became not only a Slash Filmcast listener,
Ooh.
but a good sit patron.
Oh,
He's a patron
dang.
of the show at the good sit level, and he called me specifically to tell you guys that he is now our boss.
Wow.
So
bold.
he wants us. Yeah, he wants us to be very well aware that he is now that he and about 700 other people are paying to be our bosses. They're paying our salaries. They're our bosses, and he is going to relish that power and use it as however he wants. So
all right. Well,
there you go.
look forward to that. So that's the Midnight concert. Jeff, what else have you been watching this week?
I also checked out the new Netflix comedy special, Sarah Cooper, Everything's Fine. People, I'm sure, are familiar with Sarah Cooper from her, I think, very, very deservedly popular Trump lip syncs TikToks.
For sure.
That
She has. I know a lot of people who are into comedy who kind of hate that is what she did to get to be popular. But I also think those things are great, and her talent as a physical comedian is undeniable. I think there.
I agree. I do think that. I mean, I've watched almost all of them that she's done. I think she does that. It's not on the face of it. It's something that you would go, okay, anybody could do that.
That's it.
But
that's it.
Yeah, but no, the way she does it is the reason it became so popular. She does not just lip sync Trump. There is a skill and an art that she applies, and it is evident, and it makes it into something. It makes it into something very specific and very funny.
So the big question, Jeff, is could she translate this into a more conventional TV show? Yeah.
Well, it isn't a conventional TV show. It's really a sketch show. It's a comedy special that is a sketch show.
Well, but that's what I mean. It's like as opposed to like a 30-second thing. Like a 20 or 30-minute thing.
My answer to that is no, but I don't necessarily. She had a lot of help. There are a lot of cameos in this. There are a lot of very, very famous people.
Because it was so Everything's Fine was directed by Natasha Lyonne, and I'm sure she helped bring on a lot of these.
I think it's like executive produced by Maya Rudolph and Fred Armisen, and they're both in it.
They're both in it. Yeah.
John Hamm is in it. The list goes on and on and on.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yes, and there's a lot of people having fun in it, but it is sort of loosely structured as she plays this character who hosts a morning, one of those peppy morning shows, news shows, but then it spirals off into sketches. It's full on sketches, fake commercials. It's a very much a sketch comedy show, and some of them are funny. And it is interesting that she still tries to use the lip syncing thing as a hook, right? There's lip syncing of Trump, there's lip syncing of other people, there's putting her face on things, using special effects to put her face on things while she's lip syncing. All of it's fine, but I just never thought the special as a whole caught fire or gained any momentum for me. It was fine, but I didn't ever, some of the gags were a little stale to me and didn't really land. And I overall was a little disappointed by it, to be frank. I'm still a fan of her and what she does. I think she's really smart. And there's a few sections of it that are really whip smart. But overall, I found it to be pretty uneven and not particularly great.
How about you, Devinder? You also had a chance to watch Sarah Cooper's Everything's Fine, right?
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from, Jeff. I think it's really enjoyable. It is a fun thing to watch right now, especially as like we are, looking at the specter of this election and everything that's going to happen tomorrow, on election day, and everything that's going to happen after the election. Like there's just so much. I think this special in a strange way is a good way to like cap off 2020 and just the insanity of it, because it does try to confront all those things. It is a little hit or miss. I don't think all the segments work, but I think her bits specifically are pretty fantastic. There's some really good stuff, and the cameos, I think for the most part, after a while, it just seems like a bit much for a 45-minute special. But I think a lot of them are pretty solid, and also has a great Maya Rudolph sequence because she plays the weather lady on this morning show, and she is just let's put Maya Rudolph in everything. Why isn't she a huge
should be
star
in everything
at this point?
I mean, she
It's
kind of
fantastic.
Is.
She is. I mean, a big, an enormous star. She should be in freaking everything, because she hasn't really been in that many films. And I know she's kind of taken, some breaks during her career, like to do other things, because the industry just has never been that great to her. So anyway, I love Sarah Cooper. I kind of love everything. I love all the people in the special. I just wish the sketches were better. It's definitely worth a watch. And certainly if you're looking to, I don't know, for some people, it's a very weird zany humor type of thing. It confronts the apocalypse in a way. It confronts the insanity of our times directly, and it's not like light humor, but I do think it if you process the world as it is right now through humor like this, I think it would be perfectly fine for you.
I did think that it was pretty impressive how willing to be absurd it was. It really goes absurd, and I've always been a fan of that kind of humor, and it does not go halfway. It gets really bonkers, and that's fun.
I love it. Yeah, let's go all the way.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've heard some rough things about this show, to be honest with you. I think probably the least charitable thing I heard was it feels like a personification of the Bart Gets Famous episode of The Simpsons, where he gets famous because he accidentally says the phrase "I didn't do it" live on TV. Do you guys know what this episode is? Anyway.
Yep.
But
let me just say, I've seen a lot of the I know people who are doing comedy too. It's just like a lot of those criticisms are just like so tired because they're devaluing like what she does beyond the Trump stuff. So that's all. That's all. I am tired of seeing that.
For sure. There's a lot of jealousy out there. Well, anyway.
Like she is a working comedian that's been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah,
She's not just some nobody who just all of a sudden started TikToking Trump.
It's true. I bought Sarah Cooper's book, actually.
Yeah.
Which I found was very amusing.
It's just Trump's words written out.
It's just transcriptions of Trump speeches. No, it was called 100 Tricks to Appear Smart in Media.
Yes.
Which I own and have gotten a great deal of enjoyment out of. when I
Because you're
read,
using it as an actual instruction
I
manual,
use
right?
it as
Yeah.
actual. I use it actually. I mean, some of these things are actually really good.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me read some of these to you, if I may, because it is frightening how many of these actually work in real life. I'm just gonna put this out there. I'm gonna say that none of these would work at the current company that I work at right now. But I'm not saying that they might have worked at previous companies I've worked at that
I
shall
see.
remain nameless. Okay. But here are some of Sarah Cooper's 10 tricks to appear smart in meetings. Number 2, translate percentages into fractions. If somebody says about 25% of all users click on this button, quickly chime in with, so about 1 in 4, and make a note of it. Everyone will nod their head in agreement, secretly impressed and envious of your quick math skills. People actually do this stuff.
That's great.
I'll just read one more. Number 7, pace around the room. Whenever someone gets up from the table and walks around, don't you immediately respect them? I know I do. Walk around, go to the corner, lean against the wall, take a deep
Yeah.
contemplative sigh. Everyone will freak out and wonder what you're thinking.
She used to work at Google, so
Yeah,
I wonder how
exactly.
much of this is just like
Yes.
actual what works at Google type
100%.
things. Yeah.
100%. Anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Sorry you didn't enjoy it, but the show is Sarah Cooper. Everything's fine. And I agree with you. She is very, very talented. All right, let's move on to weekly plugs. We're going to do weekly plugs. Let's do weekly plugs. Weekly plugs. Plugs. Let's do weekly plugs. Weekly plugs is a segment each episode where we plug something that we have created or something that someone else has created that we really appreciate. I'll start real quick. I had a chance to interview Caesar Kuriyama for Culturally Relevant at culturallyrelevantshow.com. Caesar Kuriyama is
Caesar.
Love it. Yeah.
Caesar Kuriyama is the creator of the 1 Second Everyday app, which I've been using for several years now, in which you record 1 second of every day of your life and then stitch them all together to form a movie about your life.
Have you totaled those seconds at this point, Dave? Like, what does that number look like?
I probably have about 7 years a second, so it's about probably
Wow.
like half an hour of video, 30, 40 minutes of video of my life that represents the last, like, basically my time in Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
It is a super meaningful process to do the 1 second every day thing. I'd strongly recommend it, and I had a great time talking with Caesar about how he formed his company and also how his company is adjusting in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, 1 second every day, you generally shoot and share these videos because you want to like share how like awesome your life is and all the great things happening in your life, and how you're going out and having all these great times. And it's different in a pandemic, and so we talk about that on Culturally
great
Relevant.
times.
Yeah, Culturally Relevant is the podcast. Check that out at. Okay, Devindra, what's a weekly plug you have?
It's all console all the time right now for me. So I'd recommend the last episode of the Engadget podcast where we talked about the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 and gave some early impressions. I chatted with Jessica Condit, who covers video games at Engadget too. We both have units, and we were able to like just have a really good conversation talking about how we feel about all these things. Get ready to flame me, Sony fans. I don't know, just because I don't like the shape of the box, but hey, it's a fun conversation. Go check it out, and we will have a lot more coming soon in Gadget.
All right, and how about you, Jeff?
We'll stay on that video game tip, and I'll tell you about the most recent episode of my video game podcast, DLC, episode 363, with special guest Alex Amancio. He is one of the people that helped make the Assassin's Creed franchise at Ubisoft, helped make Far Cry 2, which I think is still the best Far Cry. And he left Ubisoft to make his own company, Reflector Entertainment, partnered with one of the creators of Cirque du Soleil. And they are making a game that was announced at Gamescom last year called Unknown 9. The thing that's so fascinating about that game is that it's not just a game. They're doing an entire cross-media franchise with it. It's going to be a comic book and a TV series and a movie and a podcast, all the same universe, all shared stories, and all shepherded by Alex. And I think he is one of the best guests we've ever had on DLC. And I say that knowing that both of the people I'm talking to have been guests on the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, you said he is
I
one.
mean, I get it.
He is
I
one
get
of
it.
the best guests, of which we are also one of the best guests.
Better. Let's just say he's in an echelon that is not currently represented in this conversation.
Wow.
I am
Wow,
not computing
Jeff.
this.
Yeah.
Jeff,
Okay.
wow.
I'm gonna remember this next time you desperately need a guest a few days before the podcast.
If only Jeff knew somebody who could talk about these new consoles.
Oh,
yeah.
it stings. It
Oh,
stings.
man.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
what are either of you doing next Sunday at 7:15 p.m.? No, seriously though, he is a fantastic guest. Really, really honest and open about the challenges of that, and talks specifically about the Cyberpunk 2077 delay and how delaying games works from a developer's point of view. It's a fantastic episode, and it just went live this morning. So check it out. It's 5by5.tv/DLC in episodes 363.
All right. Those are our weekly plugs. We also want to thank the people who donated to the podcast this week. We got some nice messages, too, from a couple people. First, this message comes in from Rob, who sent in a very generous donation. Rob from alternateending.com writes in, "Greetings /Filmcast crew. I was a late bloomer to the podcast medium, having started listening to Serial Season 1 back in 2014. Side note from David Chen, Serial Season 1, of course, the podcast that invented podcasting, right? Alongside,
that tracks.
alongside Mark Maron's WTF podcast,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And Conan O'Brien. That's how it goes. Yeah.
The three canonical podcasts that created the podcasting world. Yeah. After having my mind blown by how much I could enjoy audio-only content, allowing me to fill in the silence of long commutes and workouts, I went in search of a movie-related podcast to scratch my cinephile itch. Which sounds kind of gross. After being disenchanted with the majority of the film snobbery I was finding, I finally stumbled onto the /Filmcast. Here were three friends talking about movies in ways I could relate to and understand. While listening to the episodes, I found myself chatting in my head alongside all of you, and even audibly yelling in the rare instances I disagreed with you. I haven't missed an episode since. You all inspired me so much that back in 2017, my wife and I launched our own podcast to capture our he said, she said discussions from a film school dropout and casual moviegoer. We've since added a film critic to the mix as well. After compiling over 150 episodes, a listener recently told us that we inspired them to start their own podcast. It took time to think about that for a while. Here we are, 3 years later, paying the gift you all gave us forward to someone else. We wouldn't be here today without the /Filmcast. Since we always encourage our listeners to hit us up on social media, leave a rating on iTunes, or possibly donate if it in no way creates a hardship for them, I thought it was hypocritical that I haven't done the same for you. To make up for my long overdue contribution, please find included with this note a 5-year lump sum donation via a one-time PayPal, and be on the lookout for me as a patron going forward. I hope it in some way represents a fraction of the value you provided us. Keep up the great work. You never know who you may be inspiring."
That's
that comes
awesome.
from Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, what a lovely message from Rob. The only thing that I thought was a little bit of a bummer about that otherwise amazing message is this idea that we inspired Rob to start a podcast as somehow being a good thing. And
We don't need more competition.
I think
Rob.
it's more like the way he's describing it. Like we made him start a podcast, and then he made someone. It honestly, it's like it follows. You know, like the horror movie. Like you start a podcast, and then someone listens to it, and then like this horrifying naked man on a roof follows you around until you pass the podcast bug on to someone else. Now this other person has the thing following them.
Sounds more like
to
the
talking
Ring.
to a microphone.
Yeah, it's like the Ring. It follows. Yeah, like any of those things. So
7 episodes.
You know what Andy Warhol once said? In the future, everyone will have a podcast.
it's true. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. So on the one hand, Robert, you're welcome. On the other hand, we are so sorry about this. Period. The end.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, we got a message from Jamie Scott from New York, who donated and wrote in the following. I started listening to the /Filmcast after the 2016 election. My podcast feed was full of news podcasts, and after Trump won the election, I couldn't stand to listen to any of it anymore. I needed escapism, so I looked for entertainment and film podcasts to replace all my news podcasts. I listened to yours first, And much to my disappointment, you talked about the election for almost the whole episode.
Yep,
But
that's what we do.
you seemed like a nice group, so I persevered. Over time, the Slash Filmcast became part of my weekly routine. I'd listen to episodes up to the spoiler bumper, then weeks or months later, after I have seen the film in question, I'd find the old episode and finish it. This was a lot more fun when you could actually go to the movie theater. I kept meaning to donate, but never got around to it. So here's 4 years worth of $2 monthly donations. Keep up the great work. By the way, I almost always agree with Dave, except for standing ovations. I'm English, and I really think they should be reserved for truly exceptional performances. So thanks to
Those
Jamie
English,
Scott from
yeah.
New York for that message. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I would say that episode that we recorded after the election is probably one of the most. I'm not going to say it's our best episode, but it is one of the most remarked upon episodes that people like. Probably more people have written in referencing that
yeah.
episode than any other episode. I think. I guess it really
Yeah.
helped people to hear other people process what was happening in real
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
One thing that's kind of an After Dark topic that we're not going to get to put in the After Dark because by the time it's the After Dark, it's going to be over. Is because of the Patreon, we started a new section of the show document called potential future After Dark topics, and we're writing things there that might be After Dark topics. And one of you wrote it. I assume this is Jeff. One of you wrote in the 2020 election coping mechanisms ? And so I thought this might be a good time to just bring up coping mechanisms as we're wrapping up this weekly plug / donation section. But it's a very
You already
stressful
said
time.
the edibles one.
I already said the edibles. Yeah, so I guess I'm curious. Like, do you guys like? I'll just say I'm still debating what I'm even gonna do for election night tomorrow.
Sure.
I hear some options.
Don't just doom scroll. I feel like that's the only
doom
thing,
scroll. I was thinking of doing like a live broadcast that might help people to talk to have some people to chat with. Thinking of like eating and drinking a lot of random things. Like having like kind of a party of some kind. That stuff. But I'm curious like how you guys are thinking about it. What's your kind of
Well, I want to
yeah.
say, to pull back the curtain a little bit, Dave did suggest us recording the After Dark on election nights.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Or the
And-
whole episode
Yeah.
on election night, which
Yes.
would have been hard.
Weird.
But yeah.
But also, my wife walked in the room as I was considering this, as I was furiously texting back and forth with the guys, and she said,
no,
"Absolutely
we gotta get
not.
drunk. Yeah.
You will not be leaving me alone for several hours to do a podcast while I deal with this by myself."
Yes.
She said, "I need emotional support tomorrow night."
See,
So,
it's interesting. I think like this is the thing is like we kind of. I think there was a disconnect when we were texting about this because I think you were very reasonably being like, okay, like how can I take care of my family during this momentous event?
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
I already knew this is a fact. Like my wife is like, oh yeah, I don't care what you do. Like it's because there's a possibility she might be like asleep by 9 p.m. You know what I mean? Because she just wants to like
And there's
completely.
a possibility
That's
I'll
the
never
way to
sleep
deal with it,
again.
folks.
There's a possibility Jeff has slept for the last night ever.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, so it's just kind of like I think the vibe in the Chen household is going to be very different,
Yeah.
than like
I'm impressed. I wish I had her ability
Yeah.
to compartmentalize.
Yes, good. Well, diplomatically put, Jeffrey. Diplomatically put. So Devindra, any thoughts on how you're going to kind of get through election night?
I feel like so there are healthy ways and there are unhealthy ways. My unhealthy way, which I could just kind of that's the reality for what I'm in right now, is just burying myself in work because I've been writing nonstop for days, and that's not going to stop until this week is over. So there are a lot of things happening. I will be doing a lot of work, and also like I'm spending time with my baby, and I think that's the fun way, like that's the bit of fun I can have in this hellscape, is because I moved to Georgia to have a little more room and a safe area for my daughter to play and hang out and not be cooped up in a cold New York apartment, because right now things are super cold in the Northeast, and I feel for everybody there. One nice thing about being in the Southeast is that it's relatively warm and we can still go outside and do stuff. So I'm enjoying that and taking advantage of what I can. A lot of baby time. I do think maybe during election night itself, if I'm not working, I may just do the like pop in like every hour, just like, okay, where are we? What's going on? And then I'll go play a game or something or read a book and then pop in another hour. Because sitting there and staring at it just doesn't, it's not going to help anybody, like find ways to distract yourselves. I'll still be curious about what's happening. I feel like that's going to draw me back in. But the most dangerous thing is to just sit there and stare at Twitter and, at the news commentary and try to figure things out from there.
Well, I'm in a pretty terrible position because Wednesday is the dungeon run.
Yeah.
And I do a tremendous amount of work on Tuesdays to prepare for that show.
There you go.
But that requires focus and creative thinking and escaping into a fantasy world of my own creation. And I've already told the cast, like, don't expect a lot this week because I'm just not going to be in the headspace to be able to create, this fantasy world. I wish I had that kind of ability to check out. I fear I will not be able to check out tomorrow. I will be mainlining the whole day. And I recognize that's not healthy, but also, I heard a great quote. Somebody was standing in line to vote, and the reporter came up to them and said, how long have you been waiting to vote? And the person said, 4 years.
Yes.
And that's kind of how I feel. Is like, literally, this is the moment that I've been thinking about nearly every day for the last 4 years. And, it's I just don't know how I'm going to be able to not be on pins and needles all day long.
Are you more worried or more excited, Jeff? Because I have
Way
to
more
say,
worried.
I'm certainly worried too, but I'm not gonna like, jinx us or anything here. But I think things look
Sounds like that's
okay
exactly
for
what
the-
you're about to do.
Yeah, for the non-Hellstorm. I'm excited to see who goes blue. I'm excited to see.
Yeah, because
how
this is the first time.
changes
This is
the
the first
shape of
time you're
things.
living in a swing state, Devindra, for probably in the first time in
First
your life.
time
You moved to a
Georgia has been a
battleground.
viable swing state for decades.
Yeah.
If it seems like it's been a long time.
Does it feel different? Does it feel different, like to live in a swing state than not?
Yeah, well, it feels like, okay, what I'm doing, I when we we voted early, I dropped my ballot off at the library, and that felt momentous. Like, it felt like a shift. It felt like you were actually doing something, because I've lived in New England my entire life. So it's like,
you can move
everyone's
back.
gonna be Democratic. Yeah.
you're done. You did what you needed to do. You can
Mission
move
mission
back.
accomplished. Mission accomplished.
That was actually my secret. It was me and a whole bunch of people from New York. We all moved down to red states, and this was our plan all along. But no, I'm very excited to see what happens. And shout out to Stacey Abrams and all the work she's done to really spur voters on. She lost the gubernatorial election, a couple years ago here.
But it was
Georgia.
close. It was closer than anyone ever thought it would be.
Yep. It was so stolen.
straight up
It would be
stolen.
more accurate to say she won the gubernatorial election.
She won. She did win. It was stolen, but she didn't just back down.
Yeah.
She got to work, and she mobilized people, and goddamn, I feel it here. And there's an energy here, and I love it. So I'm hoping for Georgia. I'm hoping for Texas, which
Yeah, me
apparently
too.
looks incredible too. So I feel the fear,
Pennsylvania.
but I am leaning into the excitement of it all, because this is definitely going to be an election to be remembered for a long time. It's gonna have some lasting effects throughout the entire country.
Yep. And what's so
And like I said, it must be weird. People
listening to this after
this.
this has already occurred. Yeah.
Yep.
But that's why we wanted to record the After Dark after the election itself, so that it didn't sound
tone.
hopelessly out of touch. What'd you say, Jeff?
It'd be a different tone, no matter what.
Yep. It'll be a different tone. I would recommend an article I read in the New York Times today by Charlie Warzel called "You're Waiting for Election Results. It's Agony. Here's what to do." I'll link to it in the show notes. And he gives a few tips here. One of the experts says, don't cancel, schedule. And they quote someone saying, lots of people tell me they're canceling everything during election week. And I'm like, no, please don't cancel. Schedule. If you have nothing to do, you'll only revert to worrying and obsessively consuming news. Just as many believe in prayer, here I believe in action. Vote yourself, help others to safely vote. But don't limit yourself to just one thing. Any activity that can provide a sense of control or agency will feel like a balm in this moment. Volunteer, start a craft project, cook, do something that reminds you life will go on. Another thing to do: don't deny your feelings. Don't deny that you're scared, and don't try to like push those things down. Have someone to vent to. Allow those feelings to come out somehow in a productive way. And another one: give yourself something to look forward to. Focusing on something desirable is a great strategy. It's not fiddling while Rome burns, said this guy named Mr. Markman, who's an expert in these kind of things. There'll be time to refocusing thoughts to. There'll be time to refocus thoughts to the election as returns come in. But planning and executing something you enjoy will reduce uncertainty between now and then. So, Jeff, maybe that.
Wait, I'm looking at this article, Dave. Here's a weird one. Number 13, buy a gun? That seems like a weird one.
I mean, you say that jokingly, but millions of people have actually become first-time gun buyers.
I know.
Yeah. So
and Walmart pulled ammo off its shelves in anticipation of
they
an
actually
American
they
election.
actually reversed that.
Reversed
They were going to, and then they reversed it because probably a little chicken shit. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, anyway, I'll link to this article in the show notes, and hopefully, whatever you are doing out there in the world, you are staying healthy, you're staying safe, and that you vote. These are our hopes for you as our listeners. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that could go down this week. I hope that there is no violence, is what I am hoping for.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
I don't think that's a likely.
There already has been violence,
Yeah.
and it's crazy. So there is that. Part of me wonders, like, I kind of want to do just like a live stream of a movie during election, like a live tweet.
We could do an
of a
Amazon
movie.
watch
let's
party.
just watch something.
Do an Amazon
let's just
watch
all
party.
watch something, folks. Yeah, please.
Let's I'll text you, Devindra. Maybe we can do an Amazon watch party tomorrow. Maybe we can watch
I
Borat
see.
on Prime Video. Something like that. I don't know.
We can do something, but let's give people a place to like come and congregate.
Yeah,
and,
that's kind of what I was thinking. Is like I
Yeah.
want people to like have something to think about and do that's not just doom scrolling. So maybe we'll do something. I don't know. Still thinking about it. It's really probably going to be a game time decision, and come down to like how I feel in the 3 minutes before I decide to start doing.
Oh
it.
no, most
So,
definitely. It's all going to be insane.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for all the people who donated to the podcast this week. We are accepting Patreon contributions at patreon.com/film podcast. You can donate there to get some cool benefits. But if you just want to make a one-time donation and do maybe a shout out, go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/wordfilmcast. Of course, never donate to Patreon or to PayPal if it in any way causes you hardship. The show will always be free for all to listen to, the main podcast episode. But if you want to support us, we'd love it. And also, if you want to support us for no money, just head on over to Apple Podcasts, leave a star rating. It really does help. Let's get to our review of. Hold on. Let me do this
On the
again.
Rocks.
Let me do this again. It really does help. All right, let's get to our review of On the Rocks. Had to leave a little space in there for the episode. You thought I had forgotten the name of the movie, though, Jeff, right?
I did. Hey guys, I'm seeing here on Twitter that the first vote in Dixville Notch was for Biden.
Woo!
Woo!
From a lifelong Republican who says, "My vote today is meant to send a message to my fellow Republicans that our party can find its way back."
Yay!
That's hopeful.
The first vote in Dixville Notch. Anyway, that's that.
The West Wing.
episode.
The West Wing.
Yeah.
Hartsfield
Okay.
Landing, yeah, which is the analogy, yeah, the analog. On the Rocks trailer. Clean this up because I fucked this up. I didn't pull the trailer audio, so Beatty's gonna have to put it in here. All right, here we go.
Okay.
That was from the trailer for On the Rocks, the new film written and directed by Sofia Coppola. I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. A young mother reconnects with her larger-than-life Playboy father on an adventure through New York. This movie has debuted on Apple TV Plus recently.
Not just
Uh,
TV, but movies.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is the second film we've ever reviewed that's on Apple TV Plus.
Hmm.
But we thought, hey, what a great way to record on the eve of the apocalypse. You know, let's review something light. Let's review something.
Yeah. A title
That,
that is very descriptive about our entire democracy.
indeed. So,
But yeah.
Devindra, I think you've been a fan of some of Sofia Coppola's work in the past. What did you think of
Sure.
On the Rocks? Did you feel like
Mm.
this movie really kind of was, you know, like whenever you watch a Bill Murray film, you know there's going to be some fun times, but is it going to deliver on the emotional heft of something that Sofia Coppola is capable of? What do you think?
Well, let me put it this way. This week I watched a Sofia Coppola movie about a woman who was uncertain about her career, thought her relationship might be falling apart, and spends the night with Bill Murray traversing a city as she tries to piece her life together. But enough about Lost in Translation. I mean, come on. It's
Boom
obvious.
goes the dynamite.
Boom goes the
Nice.
dynamite.
It's I didn't even want to do it because it was so obvious is the thing. But I have to.
You
if
hate
you're
you
gonna give
hate
me
yourself
this-
now. You hate yourself.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I feel dirty. But if you're going to give me this movie, I just kind of I have to take the easy pickings.
Yeah.
I think this movie is of a piece with Lost in Translation, but nowhere near as good, nowhere near as deep or as meaningful. It's a fun time. I think what it does explore, it's nice to have Rashida Jones in a really meaty, in a good starring role. I don't think the part is particularly meaty. This is a movie about a woman who's exploring her life because she's a mom in a fancy Soho apartment in New York. She has two beautiful kids, and her husband, played by Marlon Wayans, is just always out working. She's beginning to suspect he's cheating on her, and that's kind of it. She's kind of lost her mojo in a bunch of ways, and Bill Murray is just this little imp who just comes out and breathes some life into her dull life, I guess. I think he is fun, but it's Bill Murray being Bill Murray, as you'd imagine he would in kind of every situation here. It has an exploration of, I don't know, being a mom and being part of a family and seeing, getting older and seeing all that, seeing the things you kind of want drift away from you. I don't think it's particularly deep. And this movie does go some interesting places, and we'll talk about some of that in spoilers, where I think like it hints at like almost getting to a really interesting point around this Bill Murray character. And I don't think it quite hits that. It was an enjoyable watch. And I will say the one big takeaway for me for this movie is that, God damn, I miss New York. I miss just walking around and seeing people on the street and hopping in a cab and going to, a bar that you've only heard about on in a movie or somewhere, or someplace, sitting somewhere where a Hollywood legend, once sat. I miss the vibe and energy of the city, and this movie is really full of that, and I kind of appreciate that. Um, it's very much New York through, a well-to-do rich family, as is Sofia Coppola's kind of thing. But it's also like the problems I think are pretty universal. It's a mom who's dealing with her husband not always being there, being frustrated because she is now more of a mom than a writer or somebody who is defined by her career. And that's all interesting. I wish the movie kind of went further. It feels a little too light, a little too fluffy, and like with a little bit of a twist. It probably could have been deeper. But I think my big takeaway from this movie is I don't quite know this Rashida Jones character.
Mm.
I know how she defines herself through this relationship, but I don't know who she is. And I think the movie spends way more time on Bill Murray and kind of his escapades and what he means to her, rather than, what she is actually doing for herself. So I think that kind of hurt the entire finale of this film. But it's fun, it's enjoyable, but if you've never seen Lost in Translation before, go watch that first, please.
It's interesting that you say that this film makes you miss New York, because
Yeah.
while I do think that this film renders New York in a very vivid way, that way is quite negative in my opinion. Like
I don't think it's negative.
where-
I think there's certain people she's confronting, sure,
But-
in certain restaurants. Yeah.
but the way that New York is framed is almost exclusively as like this is a place where you are surrounded by people and yet
Mhm.
completely and utterly alone. You know, that is my
Yeah.
takeaway from it.
That is
Is that
Sofia Coppola's specialty, by the way. Like
right,
that
right,
is what
right.
she does very well.
But
Yeah.
So
also, isn't that's what people love about New York?
That's what
That's
people
not a
love about New
negative.
York.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess, you know, it's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But I just,
Mhm.
so basically, I'm saying I understand why this movie would make you nostalgic for New York. At the same time, I look at it and it makes
Yeah.
New York look like a place I would not want to live.
I,
You know
I
what I'm saying?
don't think you've ever really wanted to live in New York, Dave. Like that's the thing. Like
I did
having
I'll say I did when I was a kid. You know, when I was in
and I know
high
you
school.
spent
Yeah,
you spent some time there,
yeah,
and I remember like after you spent what was it, a summer there, you're
yeah.
like, no, no thanks. And that's the thing. Like you're either with it or you're not. But if you're the type of person who just like loves the vibe, loves the pulse of just like walking out to a sidewalk and seeing everybody, like just seeing tons of people off to do their own things, sure, it probably feels a little lonely. But if you catch that wave, it is intoxicating. I think that's the real energy of the city. But it's also like, this movie explores super, or at least very rich New York and very privileged New York in a way that I never really got to. But I think the basics of it just really make me miss the city. That's just me. That's just because I've lived there for 10 years, and I think I cannot wait to get back, because I love the city. And it feels like a love letter to New York in many ways, but it certainly pokes fun at the rich art crowd and the like douchey startup people. Like there, it does a lot of those things really well too.
All right, Jeff Canada, what did you think of On the Rocks?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say what I thought of On the Rocks is best
Uh-huh.
summed up in the form of a limerick.
Interesting.
Mhm. This film's a situational flurry, making comedy out of worry.
Mhm.
Yet it plays it straight and leaves its fate up to the charm of Bill Murray.
Nice. I was gonna be really impressed if you didn't make the last word Murray. You know what I mean? It would have been like a big head fake.
That would have been fun.
Next time, think about that, Jeff. Think about mixing it up a little bit.
How dare you?
Nicely done.
professional.
Nicely done on the limerick, though, Jeff.
Listen, the election is tomorrow. We can only go so hard, Dave. Okay, don't
Exactly. This one was
Yeah.
not
I
the
chose
best. You
the
can find-
easy boom goes the dynamite joke. Jeff did this limerick. We're
Yeah.
moving on.
I'm doing.
You know
I'm
what?
doing.
We're
I do
moving
no
on.
work at all, basically. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just
Exactly.
say, if you are interested in getting your own bespoke limerick,
Yes.
cameo.com/Jeff Canada. Can I tell you guys?
Please
Can I tell you?
Tell us.
Uh-huh.
Today,
Yep.
today,
Today. Yep.
today, on cameo.com, I did my 50th limerick.
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Holy shit! That's a lot of cash at that point, Jeff.
You'd be surprised how much Cameo removes from the equation. But yes, it is a lovely little bonus, and I'm grateful for every single person. Hopefully, every single person that's got a limerick has loved them. I've gotten a bunch of 5-star reviews, people responding with wonderful notes of gratitude.
Nice.
It has been a joy, and I'm so grateful to Danish Syed for telling me to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're
no.
one true friend. Yeah.
So good. So good. That he
So
did that.
about this movie, I basically agree with everything that Devendra said. I can't help but think of this movie as a disappointment,
Mhm.
mostly because of how much I love Lost in Translation.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, that's it.
And I was very excited about this movie, very excited to see it. I watched it, a week before we were reviewing it because I just couldn't wait. I was so excited. And Devendra's right that it's charming and it is light and it is an easy watch. But it is a strange thing because on the face of it, it's actually this really broad, goofy, romantic comedy premise.
Mhm.
The
Yeah,
idea is,
yeah.
okay, a woman who thinks her husband is cheating has to hang out with the most notorious cheater and find out if it's true. Like she teams
Yeah.
up with a notorious cheater.
Bill Murray
and
plays
It takes
a
a
carrot.
villain to know a villain. Yeah.
it takes a villain. Only the guy who's cheated more than anybody else can help her find out.
This is the
if her
Suicide
husband's
Squad
cheating.
of cheater movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but it takes that premise and like plays it straight. And the whole
Mhm.
movie, I'm going like, are we not all aware of what's going on here? Like it just seems like it's this big goofy idea that you could have had Will Ferrell in. It could have been that kind of big broad comedy, and yet Sofia Coppola sort of handling it in this really sort of straight-laced, austere way. And I felt like the movie didn't land on either side of those things because it didn't ever lean into the fun and the funny, but it also didn't ever land the, real interesting look at, fidelity and marriage and what leads someone to have those thoughts and all that stuff that I think a more sophisticated movie would have done. Like that could have been an interesting, what's the marriage movie that's become a meme that we reviewed?
Marriage Story?
Tully?
Marriage Stories.
Tully?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Not Tully. Not Tully.
I just like that the movie is called Marriage Story, which is probably the most descriptive movie title you could find, and you couldn't think of it, Jeff. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
that's
I
amazing.
had that in my head, and I thought that can't be right. That
Is
just sounds
it
too
Marriage
strange.
Tale? Is it Marriage Fable? Anyway, go
Jeff,
ahead.
the king of accurate titles. I'm really
Yeah.
disappointed
Marriage
you forgot this
Story.
one.
That one that's a story about a marriage.
It's a story about a marriage. It's like a thing with a beginning, middle, and end that's about a marriage. It's told in sequential
Yeah.
order.
Oh, Matrimony Tale? No. So anyway, it's that movie that's really about divorce and about what divorce does to people and how these, it's a much more serious movie, right? And On the Rocks doesn't want to be that, but it also kind of doesn't want to be a big broad comedy. It just sits in this weird, awkward place where it doesn't really do either thing very, very well. And ultimately, I thought it kind of is a cop-out. I mean, we'll get to it in spoilers, but it's kind of a cop-out on the whole premise. And it just is this kind of meandering little fluff tale that I think without Bill Murray wouldn't have been very fun. Like he kind of, like Devindra said, he brings all this life to it.
There's one scene where he just like turns on the Bill Murray charm and charms a guy into loving him.
Let's
talk
talk
so great.
Let's
That
talk
is
about
so
it. Let's
good.
talk about it in the spoilers.
And I love Rashida Jones. I love Marlon Wayans. I think these are talented actors, but I think Rashida Jones is almost completely wasted in this movie. She's kind of sleepwalks
she's not
through
doing
it.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, and her character is just sort of this bland, uninteresting woman without much agency, and I just don't.
She wants
I don't
to
know.
write.
I
I
was-
get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really disappointed by this movie, and that's not to say it's terrible. It just didn't live up to the movie that it is clearly invoking, right? I mean, you have a Sofia Coppola movie with Bill Murray, and he's in New York drinking martinis on the, it's like, what
She
you're
knows
selling.
what she's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I just, it is so inferior to that movie that it couldn't help but be disappointed by it.
I guess when I'm watching this movie, I largely agree with what you gentlemen had to say about it. And when I'm watching this movie, here are the thoughts that occur to me. Number one, it's hard to make a story compelling that's about the troubles of incredibly wealthy, well-off people right now, I think, right? And because these people, have so many problems in their lives removed from them, it's like, therefore, I think like the craft necessary to make it something that I give a shit about is the expectation is higher for me. And there are many.
I have
shows,
to say, like Dave, let me just say, as somebody who lived in New York for a very long time, I could price that apartment like to a T.
Yeah.
And be like, God damn, okay.
Can you give me? Can you give an estimate? Can you give an estimate, Devindra?
I don't know. I mean, it looks like a 2-bedroom Soho apartment because the kids are sleeping in the same room and they have their own room. It looks like decently sized, but it's like in one of the cute Soho streets. So that's millions. That is under 2 million, I'd say.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So they're doing fine. They're doing fine for themselves. And
I mean, everybody's problems are relative, though.
Yeah.
Everybody has
Well,
problems, and problems for everyone are still problems, and money doesn't eliminate problems. And I think
agreed.
it's certainly possible to create interesting drama and human stories to people that have money. It's not like
That
they
is-
all of a
that
sudden
is
don't
what-
have problems.
That's what she does. That's
you're-
Sofia Coppola's whole thing. Yeah.
now you're stealing my thunder, Jeff. So turnabout is fair play. But
Feels
but-
good.
Yeah,
you're
no,
right. It's
doesn't
just like you're so energized.
you feel the
inside when you do
power.
that.
You feel the power.
Yeah.
But basically, I mean, the canonical example of this for me is Succession, right? Where here are people whose wealth is unimaginable even to the people in this movie, and
Yeah.
And what that show is able to do is turn the story into a battle for the soul of Kendall Roy, and
I
like
don't
kind
know,
of the
dude. That show, it's more about Schadenfreude. Though I just like
Yeah.
watching it from the outside in, and just like
Sure.
I just enjoy watching all of these people squirm.
However you want to proceed, it's like the way it's able to make it so that these people are kind of self-destructing, and you're enjoying that, right? That's
Yeah.
something that's really compelling. But for me, it's really about Kendall Roy. It's really about like what is going to happen with this guy. Is he going to find a way to redeem himself? And it's almost like this battle between good and evil that's raging inside this one character. That is interesting to me, right? And so I feel like there are ways to make stories about rich people like this really, really interesting.
I mean, I have a pitch for this movie that I think would give it a jolt.
Oh,
but
you're
we'll
gonna
talk
pull a
about that in
Jeff
spoilers.
Kanata here. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead,
I mean,
Devindra.
in spoilers.
Okay, in spoilers. Okay. But anyway,
Yeah.
point being, I don't feel. I basically, I'm saying I think there's a high bar to meet, and I don't know that the film
Yeah.
really met it.
She set
Unfortunately.
her own bar. It's the thing. It's like
Yeah.
you can't do the same thing. And
I also, by the way, just a really, really random side note before we get to spoilers is, I thought that is it Marlon Wayans that's in this film, right?
it's Marlon, yeah.
That his job, the way he talked about it, was so hilarious because
Yeah.
there's a
it's
character.
your job. It's your job, Dave.
There's a
on.
character in it basically sounded like how somebody who has never worked in that job but thinks they know what it's like would talk about it. There's a character in
Yeah. Our ROI was off. the
oh my
charts.
gosh, there's a character
Our return
in
on investment. Yeah.
there's a character in BoJack Horseman that is three children stacked up on
Yeah.
top of
Yeah.
each other in
Wanna
a
do
trench coat.
business.
And he's like he's Vincent Adult Man. And he's like, he says things like, "Hey, I went to the business factory today and I made a business." I brought this guy up a few times probably on the podcast,
Yeah.
and that's what it reminded me of when Marlon Wayans was talking. He's like, "Oh man, we
Making all
got
these deals.
we got 500,000 new followers," and it's like the ROI is insane. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
He also has to explain ROI. Yeah.
what
in the
what,
dialogue.
What
but
are
yeah.
What are you talking about?
You're talking to your wife.
This was
You
like
love this woman.
This was like a first draft of this guy's dialogue that like Sophia Coppola wrote in the script.
Yeah.
ROI
Yeah.
500,000. Like we're gonna fill this in with some more detail later, and they just never got to it. So anyway, just
yes,
completely
I agree.
completely baffling dialogue for that
because
character.
I know the guy. I know the
Yes.
guy Marlon Wayans is playing in this movie, and like, yeah, sure, that's your caricature.
They're
guy.
slightly
Yeah.
smarter than that. They're slightly smarter than that is what I have to say about it.
Mhm.
And a lot of the social media, the people who run social media things are, I'm just gonna say as like with a lot of bias, are people who I would like to hang out with. I didn't want to hang out with this Marlon Wayans guy. Like he
Yeah.
didn't seem anyway. So
Yep.
bottom line, I thought it was weird the way that character's depicted. But anyway, let's get to spoilers for On the Rock starting right now.
Now you're looking for the secret.
You're gonna see this coming.
No,
But you won't find it because, of course,
you're not gonna see this coming.
you're not really looking.
I have been puzzling over how it works.
You don't really want to work it out.
I have been dying to tell you. I want to tell you my secret now.
You want to be fooled.
All right, let's talk
Yeah.
about spoilers. So Devindra, how would you mix it up?
Sure. So we talked about this movie being, it just leans on the Murray charm. That's what it is. That is the linchpin of so many things in this movie. And I think it does it really well. That cop scene, I think the actor who played the cop, just like the shift that guy makes and the sort of like shift from like, "Sir, get out of the car. You are a danger," to
Right.
"You're my bro. You know my grandpa? You know my dad?" It's so good. Like that scene is really well done and really encapsulates the magical power of Bill Murray. The Bill
It's
Murray that
amazing. Yeah,
exists.
it's incredible. You know what it reminded me of a
Yeah.
little bit was did we talk about The Rider on the podcast? Were you guys on the Rider podcast episode that
I
we did?
don't recall. No, I don't think so. We
no,
did, we
Devindra,
did.
you and I
Yeah.
talked about. I don't know if Jeff was
Yes.
there though, but anyway,
It doesn't sound like. Yeah, I don't remember.
I think Amy Nicholson was our guest for that episode,
Mhm,
and Jeff was out. But anyway, we watched The Rider, and The Rider is about a guy who rides horses. And there's one scene in The Rider when you see the actor that plays the main character kind of basically tame a horse, for lack of a better term, right? Like
Yeah,
he
yeah.
like starts like working with a horse, and you see him kind of like get the horse under his control. And it's a remarkable moment because you're seeing this fusion between the actor and the actual person who plays that. Sorry, the character and the actor who plays the character, because the actor who plays the character is actually skilled with working with horses.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
that's kind of how I felt. This Bill Murray scene is
The
like
cop is
this.
a horse.
This
Yes.
well, it's like this. This could be a scene of Bill Murray actually doing this to someone, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. I
it
can
could be.
imagine.
Yeah,
This is how this guy goes through life, like extreme privilege. Nothing really matters, like coasting on his charm and so many
Yes.
things. And then
I also
like,
thought it was
as a
also.
plus.
I also thought it was white privilege. The scene.
Yeah, white
as well.
privilege plus charm. But hey, what if this movie reckoned with that charm and his sort of like recklessness and everything? And I think towards the end, it kind of gets to this where Rashida Jones' character confronts him about just what a shitty guy he was to his daughters and to his wife by cheating with her and cheating with her openly and kind of, really hurting his wife and basically destroying their family. At the end of this movie, they pretty much reconcile, right? Like they're ready. She's not. She's very charmed by him. She's not saying she's like fuck off, get out of my life, but he's inviting her to an adventure. She says no. It's a very like poetic way of saying like, oh, she's taking off her dad's watch and she's putting on her husband's watch, and because it sets up, oh yeah, the bangle represents who you were owned by, and I get it. And there is like the opening. Actually, the first thing you hear in this movie is Bill Murray telling his daughter, what was it like? You don't really, you belong to me until you get married or something.
yeah.
like that.
Marriage
It's
is
a
a
very
transference of property.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a very possessive thing. It's a weird thing too because it's dialogue before you see any characters on the screen. It's just like a couple sentences and then cut to Rashida Jones, right? And I feel like the way to make this movie is to fully reckon with Bill Murray as like the actual villain of this story. It is the villain and the actual villain meme. The villain of this movie is not Marlon Wayans. The villain is Bill Murray and the sort of like toxic shit he's brought into Laura's life and the impact he's had on her and the way he sort of like poisoned her relationship too. So what if you turn the charming Bill Murray guy and keep that scene with the cop, but by the end you realize, oh, this guy is just, he is fucked up and he is fucking up his daughter's life right now too. And you don't let them have the sort of happy reconciliation.
I see. So
bit.
because
Yeah,
I was like, the movie does what you're describing, but just like
it does,
they-
but it doesn't
w-
It's
go
too
all the way.
tepid to. It's too
Yeah.
tepid to really have the courage of its convictions there.
yeah.
It doesn't.
well, here's what I appreciated
actually-
about the ending, though, is that I
Mhm.
think that families are weird. You guys, I
Mhm.
don't know
Yeah.
about you guys, but like, my family and I, when I was living with my parents when I was younger, we'd get into shouting matches all the time, right? And then like 5 minutes later, you're sitting around the dinner table and everything's
Yeah,
completely
yeah,
normal,
yeah.
And I just like any movie or TV show that kind of captures that very odd dynamic of like 1 minute you're screaming at each other, but then ultimately you have to go back to these people because you're related. And
Mhm.
I think that that's kind of what that ending represented to me. Is this
No,
idea
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Like it is very like mature way to wrap the story up and be like, okay, I'm not going to go on another crazy adventure with you. I have a family, I have a life to live, but I think at least reckoning more with the movie's reliance on Bill Murray, the charming guy, because it's like so many movies about guys who are actually kind of monsters. Like I'm thinking like The Wolf of Wall Street and things like that, where it's like, oh man, this guy, look, he's so cool, he's so smart, he's got all this money, he's got a beautiful wife, and by the end of that movie, you're like, oh, I see.
right?
Like
Like Wolf of Wall Street arguably does
Yes.
reckon with those things, right?
Yeah.
The
I
darker
think
side.
at least does so more so. Whereas this movie, kind of like you have that conversation, but it's nothing. It's not like major. It's not. It doesn't feel like a life changing revelation for her. And then yeah, of course, she learns to whistle because she has her sense of self back. It just feels really pat and really neat in a way I feel like these stories don't typically actually go.
Random side note, by the way, about that wedding scene. I just thought, like,
Mhm.
just from a screenwriting slash line producing perspective or filmmaking perspective, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, what a creative way of showing a wedding for almost $0. Like wedding scenes are like generally very complex because you have
Yeah.
all the decorations and you have all the extras and all the dresses and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, the way we're going to do it is we're going to show just a close up of the bride and groom, then them escaping the wedding, and then them kind of like having a little getaway by themselves. You never actually see the wedding itself, and it's like, pretty clever, Sofia Coppola.
I like how
see
you think with the producer's mind
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But
No, I'm like, it's pretty clever. It's pretty clever.
Also, nice. I think like a nice quiet opening too. Like it really tells us a lot about their relationship. You know, where she is taking a leap with this guy, and like it's a little like risky. It's a little wild, and I kind of appreciate that because you cut to her picking up all the toys on the floor, which is a daily chore for every single
Yeah,
parent on the
I
planet.
love that.
Yeah.
My wife and I commented on that too. That just like I think it's a couple of times or 3 times in the movie she does it, and it's just that pathway of detritus spewed all across the ground that she has to. Yeah, it's like that's basically every day of my life.
Speaking of things we liked about the movie, I also really liked Jenny Slate's character. As bad
so
as Marlon
funny.
Wayans' dialogue was, I thought Jenny Slate's dialogue was perfect. It's just
So
like
funny, and
it's
Did
so-
they
yeah.
just like have her just go, Jenny Slate?
Oh, I'm
you
sure
know?
that a lot of that was improvised. You know, it just feels like that was just like let her go for as long as. Yeah,
and it's
really
it's so
funny
it's
character,
incredible
too.
because it's not like this person is like horrible. It's just like it's a
Right.
specific type of person that's just
She's an energy vampire.
energy vampire, like very self-involved, right? Like, and it's just like
Yeah.
Anyway, but Jeff, you felt the ending was a bit of a cop out, so tell us about that.
I think the ending is a complete cop out. I do. I thought the fact that the husband wasn't cheating at all and that it was all just a big misunderstanding that was brought about by dad. And just the sort of like like you get to the apartment and she's a lesbian. She was a lesbian the whole time. It's impossible for him to have been cheating. It just felt so cornball and I don't know. I didn't give the movie any credit. It felt like it was this long shaggy dog story to get to this like, oh, it was me the whole time. It was my insecurity that made me think my husband, when clearly the dude was a self-involved kind of douche. And like, there's no comeuppance for him at all.
The first scene where he climbs into bed with her was never explained, right? Like they never explained like why he had that reaction.
Right.
But
clearly they have more to work on. Their problems are not solved, but just by this.
And that there's like the final scene, the final dinner scene where he explains what's been going on and she explains what's been going on. He finally gives her the Cartier thing. It's like it just felt so like this guy bears no responsibility for the fact that his wife felt the way she felt, and I don't know, I just felt like
the end of this movie should lead into the first scene of Marriage Story. Basically,
right?
Straight to the therapist's office.
I mean, I think that the movie misses an opportunity to really be about what happens to a marriage, and in a way that Marriage Story takes it. But it's like there is an interesting idea of like what happens when initial love gives way to like kids being in the picture and all this stuff that like many other movies have taken this approach already, and but this movie doesn't really do anything interesting with that angle as well, unfortunately. So and then her writing her book, I have to say, like, that was a completely uncompelling problem. It's just like, you got a rich book deal and you can't write it. Oh wow, like I feel so bad for you.
He's such a great guy because he keeps encouraging her to write. It's like, okay, you've reached the bare minimum of what it takes to be a husband.
Yeah. So anyway, a real mixed bag. I think the issue for me is just like it's hard for me to understand what the this happy-go-lucky playboy persona that Bill Murray's character has can coexist with this much darker, more tragic side, with like kind of the wreckage that he's left from his family, and like how those things need to coexist and be together. And the movie,
I was imagining more like Broken Flowers or something too, right? Like I think
another far
Jim
superior
Jarmusch,
movie.
Yes, but Jim Jarmusch has done a much better job of exploring the Murray persona as as this sort of destructive force.
Right. So to the extent that like that's the most compelling idea I could come up with in terms of like what this movie is actually about. But as you said, Devindra, like I mean, it really only is about that in the last like 12 minutes of the movie. You know.
Yeah.
So bit of a missed opportunity, but it wasn't a movie I hated or anything like that. It's just like
Right.
it's fine.
I agree.
It's fine.
It's just disappointing.
Yeah, just a missed opportunity, but nothing like it's not horrible or anything like that. It's just like
Yeah.
oh, it could have been better, and it was just okay. But I do think to the point earlier, it does a great job of capturing New York. I think, and a certain melancholy feeling that New York can give you, and how there's this like. There's this weird like many aspects of New York and how claustrophobic it can feel, how lonely it can feel, but also like this conflict of going to this exciting restaurant that like this is a very highly desired restaurant that like a lot of people want to go to, but also I cannot hear a fucking thing inside here, right? And like there's way too many people in here, and so I like that it captures all these things about New York. So it captures this setting in a really effective way. So it's, some good things about it, some missed things about it. So those are our thoughts on the Rocks, available right now on Apple TV Plus. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be discussing next week on the podcast. But until then, this episode's theme song was provided by AdamWarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper was provided by YouTuber Kyle Hillinger. Check out his YouTube videos. Thanks to Noah Ross for our weekly plugs music. And thanks to Beatty Zhang for editing this episode of the podcast. We got an After Dark coming up this week about the election and our post-election thoughts, just reacting to it. If you want to be the first to hear it, go to patreon.com/filmpodcast. Next week on the podcast, we are going to be reviewing His House, a thriller/horror movie that's available right now on
really
Netflix.
Good. Yeah.
Devindra's watched it already. It's really good. A lot of people have said this is really, really an excellent debut film. I'm psyched to discuss it. And tentatively, next week on the After Dark, we'll confirm next week on the podcast, but tentatively, next week's After Dark will be about The Queen's Gambit, the Netflix original miniseries. So that's what's in store next week on the /Filmcast. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Again, vote, stay safe, stay healthy, be well. We'll see you all on the other side.